the credits rolled on Resident Evil 3's single-player campaign, I immediately started playing it over again. My journey through Raccoon City was so consistently packed with tense monster moments and breakneck-paced fun, and so challenging throughout its 6-odd hours, that I wanted to jump back in with sharper skills and knowledge. My undying enthusiasm for it speaks volumes of the finesse with which it manages to tread the tightrope between a confident modern horror and a tonal callback to the original Resident Evil trilogy. Just a heads up, this review exclusively covers the single-player campaign of Resident Evil 3. We'll follow up with a review of the multiplayer portion, Resident Evil Resistance, ASAP. In events that take place nearly concurrently with the equally accomplished Resident Evil 2, the endearingly practical Jill Valentine is called upon by the roguish Umbrella Corp mercenary Carlos Oliveira to help save the remaining inhabitants of a demolished Raccoon City from the carnage spawned by the T-virus outbreak. Of course, nothing goes to plan, and Jill finds herself in a wonderfully labyrinthian, zombie-studded playground where she, and your nerves, must also contend with the threat of an invulnerable monster called Nemesis. Go figure. It's a very classic Resident Evil setup, but then this is a remake of a classic, goofily fun Resident Evil story. The major events from the original Resident Evil 3 are all faithfully executed, albeit rearranged, and the cheesiness the early trilogy is known for is delivered in a charmingly self-knowing way.
It's alright, you're going ahead. I'm not gonna die on you, leave you in a cold, cruel, Carlosless world.
Okay.
The chaotic, ruined Raccoon City goes a long way toward bringing Resident Evil 3's story and the broader universe to life. Capcom has done a simply incredible job here in the small details. From the in-universe advertising to the detritus left by citizens who had to escape in a hurry to Resident Evil 2 related Easter eggs and genuinely compelling notes and journals that give tragic context to deaths like this. The detail and polish extend to the broader environments. Although you can't interact much with the world unless you are specifically instructed to, the atmosphere is always pulling out all the stops to make you feel vulnerable and small. Like its predecessor, and indeed every decent Resident Evil game before it, every part of Resident Evil 3's world feels deliberately put together. No enemy is thrown in for the sake of it, no room is there just because. At the very least, every room has useful items or a secret. Tasks like make the fire hydrant work and restore the power might sound video gamey, and they are, but solving them is never a chore. That's thanks to the elegant, interlocking level design that makes backtracking easy. But heads up, when I say easy, I don't mean safe. Thankfully, the Resident Evil 2 remake map screen returns, dutifully logging exactly where you saw that locked safe and highlighting if you've missed any items after exploring a room. It makes being thorough a lot less time-consuming and means you don't have to return to the same locations as often. Item micromanagement is where Resident Evil 3 leans hardest into its old-school survival horror lineage. Like in the original, items are your lifeline and inventory is limited, and running back and forth between storage chests to make sure nothing is wasted and certain items are combined in smart ways is a must if you want to survive for long. As long as you're careful in Resident Evil 3, you won't feel like you're being punished, and for my money, that's the mark of any good survival horror game. A sense of dread as you navigate Resident Evil 3's puzzle box of a world is not unfounded, as you can be caught easily unawares by a number of deadly nasties. There's plenty of variety in enemy design here to keep things fresh, and even your regular old zombies can prove deadly, especially because they feel faster and more erratic in their movements than their predecessors and can show up in big enough numbers to really overwhelm you. Fortunately, Jill is a lot nimbler on her feet than Leon Kennedy or Claire Redfield, which gives Resident Evil 3 a more frantic, action-oriented feel than its predecessor. Jill has a quick step move that allows her to sidestep an incoming attack, and when timed just right, it earns you a slight slow-motion effect to help you escape. Each weapon in the classic Resident Evil arsenal feels satisfyingly weighty to shoot. More importantly, I used every gun right up until the end, thanks to upgrades to basic weapons that extend their shelf life significantly. To shake up the pace, Resident Evil 3 intermittently switches you to Carlos's perspective. Our merc is a little less scrappy and nimble and a little more action-forward than Jill. His powerful assault rifle can clear a room from the get-go at the cost of precious ammunition. But again, that doesn't mean it's easier to survive. But this is primarily Jill's show, and Nemesis has got a bone to pick with her in particular. He's a powerful and fast beast, moving like a giant, horribly disfigured cat, stalking and pouncing on its prey across a series of exhilarating boss fights. These battles see you face off against him in sprawling arenas. It's just you and your gear against whatever horrific form he's evolved into. It's a shame though that he doesn't show up more often. Part of why Resident Evil 2's Mr. X is so frightening is that his arrival often felt unexpected, which led to a feeling that you were never safe, even if you were in areas that you thought you could be. Nemesis apes this pattern in Resident Evil 3's first couple of hours, which is great, but he soon gets relegated to big pre-programmed boss fights. Once that happens, that sense of being hunted by a looming pursuer operating under his own AI is sadly lost. Now that I'm back for round 2, it's a slight letdown that there's no New Game Plus like Resident Evil 2 has. However, completing in-game challenges unlocks a shop where you can cash in your points for useful items like weapons with infinite ammo and buffs to be used in a second or third playthrough. These make your next playthroughs on harder difficulties a lot more manageable. Like Resident Evil 2 before it, Resident Evil 3's 2020 remake does an amazing job of recapturing the horror and tension of the late 90s original while completely modernizing its gameplay. It plays like a 2020 game because it is a 2020 game, but it retains the hardcore survival mindset that made these horror games some of the most beloved in gaming history. The classic world is brought back to life in glorious detail, and smart level design makes exploring a delight and replaying almost compulsory. If only all remakes could be this good. Bring on the next one. For more on Resident Evil 3, check out the first minutes of gameplay and a side-by-side comparison of the remake versus the original. Also, stand by for our review of the multiplayer side, Resident Evil Resistance, followed by the final review. And for everything else, stick with us right here at IGN.